Welcome back to another episode of Pinal's People. We're joining you from beautiful Superior, and today with us is none other than Superior's Mayor, Mila Besich.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here with you today.
Thank you so much for inviting us out here and for joining us on the show. So to get started, one of the things we always ask our guests that come on the show is to share a little bit about their background for audience members who may not be super familiar with them.
Well, my name is, again, Mila Besich. My family has actually been in Superior for 5 generations, and that includes my children. I'm a small business owner, I'm a mom, and I'm the mayor of Superior. I've been being the mayor since 2016. And what an exhilarating job, but I really love serving my community and learning more about governance. I worked for the Central Arizona governments when I first started my career many, many years ago. So I got the opportunity to learn a lot about all of our communities in Pinal and Gila counties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so, Mayor, I know that you've been the Superior Mayor since 2016. And if I'm not mistaken, you were also the first woman to be elected to that position. Is that correct?
Yes, I was the first female directly elected mayor of Superior since 2016, and it's something I'm very proud of. Also the first Latina mayor elected in Superior.
Yeah, that's incredible. And prior to that, you'd also been on the council since 2013, I believe?
I won my first election, which was a recall election in 2013, to earn my seat on the Superior Town Council. And when that term was up, I was going to seek re-election, and in 2016, the opportunity to run for mayor and another recall election, I ran then.
Mm-hmm. And so if I could ask you to kind of, if we were to go back in time a little bit, back before you even ran for council and you were still debating the idea of running for council, I would love to know, what sort of was the spark that kind of started it all for you?
To be honest, I think the spark for me serving my community really began when I was in junior high and high school and having opportunities like student council and yearbook and seeing how what you were learning in high school interfaced with policy and governance. Now, my life took me a little bit away from my hometown for college. My ex-husband was in the Navy, so I lived in Norfolk, Virginia. I lived in Oceanside, California. When we were in Oceanside, I had the opportunity to open a virtual assistant business. And so that's my company, Miracle Executive Services. And the mayor at the time of Superior reached out and said, "Hey, do you think you could do some work for the town? You know so much about what's going on because you worked for CAG. Can you come and do some work with us?" And I'm virtual. So this was in the mid 1990s, or no, not mid 2000s, sorry. Can you do this? And I said, sure. And so that's where I started working with Mayor Michael Hing here in Superior, working on projects. And then military life's always very unpredictable. So I ended up coming back home while my then husband had to be deployed. And then that just kind of kept getting started. And I saw the opportunities that were happening in our community in a fast pace. All the things happening with Resolution Copper and learning more about that, but also you see the potential of your hometown in incredibly different ways when you live away from it. You realize all the beautiful nature and all the different attributes that we had. So I initially got started with elected service, serving on the school board, which I served for 10 years, and I was running my business. One of my clients is the Copper Corridor Economic Development Coalition, and I started working with Mayor Hing on projects like the Legends of Superior Trail. And those projects became projects that I was helping the town support moving them forward, whether it was organizing trail cleanups or advertising and promoting. And so all this work kind of started lending into learning more about what we needed to do for our community. But becoming mayor was a really big decision because I knew the town had a lot of challenges at the time. It was a big decision. My kids were in high school, so making sure that they and the rest of my family were comfortable with that was important. But overall, I had been seeing the opportunity in Superior and the can-do spirit of Superior at a very young age. And all of that kind of led up to, yes, I'm going to run for mayor. And the day that I was sworn in, many people have probably heard this story, but maybe not realized what dire straits the community was in. We had zero relationship with Resolution Copper, nothing meaningful. There was a relationship, but nothing meaningful. we were 6 years behind in our audits. We were $4 million in debt to ourselves in highway user revenue funds. And small towns have a struggle, balancing budgets and taking care of all the infrastructure needs. Our towns are old, so some of the infrastructure costs twice as much to fix and repair. And getting sworn in that day was like, wow, we have a big challenge. We also had ADQ not very happy with us because of some decisions on our transfer station. So we had big problems. And, thankfully we had a council that was also aligned to not only solve our problems, but to build a bigger vision and mission for our community. So being mayor has probably been the most exciting job that I've had. And I've had lots of opportunities to work in different sectors, different spaces, but seeing our community transform, solve those challenges, we're no longer in debt to ourselves. We've paid off that debt. We've really worked on our road improvements. We have an incredible relationship with Resolution Copper that is probably the gold standard of relationships with the extraction industry as far as what we're doing to build up our community. And in really understanding the impact, what I didn't anticipate when I was the mayor is how big of an impact that resolution was in the sphere of critical mineral development. And it's one of the largest untapped copper ore deposits, potentially in the world at this time. And so you have to take a step back and a deep breath oftentimes, because that is really a life-changing operation for Superior. And it's kind of a once in a generation opportunity to see Superior not only hone on to our DNA, our mining DNA, but also see the opportunities that are posed because we have the Boyce-Thompson Arboretum. And we were talking about sustainability before it was a buzzword, because the Arboretum has always been about, plant-based sustainability and how do we grow food for the arid as the world becomes more arid. So it's an exciting time to be the mayor of Superior, and I'm very thankful to be able to serve our residents and be able to share our story in a bigger way.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, so one of the things I would love to hear from you, because you were talking about the resilience of Superior, and sort of a little bit about the town's history, but, so for you, especially, I feel like for communities like Superior, what do you wish more communities in Pinal County and maybe even communities beyond Pinal County knew about this town?
Well, we're young. We're kind of an older startup, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing some really innovative things, and we're scrappy. We've got a very tiny staff, but we have a team of people from our council that we're all aligned for a mission and a vision to make our community as strong as possible and leverage every opportunity to everyone on our staff. And I see our staff working hard every single day, from public works and wastewater treatment plant, our admin team, police and fire. And smaller towns often just don't have as much luxury in their budget for all the newer, fancier tools. So we kind of say, like, we've been building an airplane. We had an old airplane and we've been building it while we're flying it. Mm-hmm. And with Resolution coming on board, it's like having a new, older airplane coming on board, and we're going to be building it while we're flying it as well. And there's beauty in taking something old, like our old high school that we just purchased, and now has this bright, beautiful innovation center called the Hive. And you're seeing that, like this building that has historic memories for generations of people who graduated from Superior High School. And seeing this facility come back to life, where instead of building something brand new, it's like we're repurposing something. And I think that's the spirit of Superior. Like, how do we do the best with what we have? And we just don't say no. We don't allow no for an answer. Our motto is, how do we get to yes? So, and that's hard in small towns because there's easements and setbacks and things like that are often a challenge. And we challenge ourselves every day. How do we make this a good thing and get through this project?
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned opportunities. Could you share a little bit, for people who might not be familiar, could you share a little bit about what some of those opportunities are here in Superior?
Well, clearly one of the big opportunities that's like right on the horizon is the Resolution Copper project. And they're going through their federal permitting process, which again, it's been covered by the media on all sources for a very long time. And we're very anxious to see that record of decision be signed and put forward by the federal government. This is going to be a huge opportunity, not just for Superior, but the entire state. It's the equivalent of 6 Super Bowls a year happening in our economy for our state. So this benefits everybody in a lot of ways. And that's exciting, but it's also like, wow, we've kind of been a sleepy, quiet town. How do we prepare for that impact? And that's where working with resolution on those mitigations has been very important. I think you're going to see Superior really grow up through that process from what had been kind of like a very quiet, sleepy town when the mine started shutting down in 1982. We have some really great environmental projects going on. We're planning on restoring water to Queen Creek, which is going to really help us with protecting the community from wildfires, but also, improve our aquifers, which will mean that Superior can grow sustainably for a very long time. And that's been a huge amount of work and bringing in lots of partners to work together. And I'm excited about that project as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, Mayor, I would like to talk to you also about something that we bring up to a lot of our guests, especially our guests who, are community leaders like yourself, which is, when you think about your community and you think, 10, 15, 20 years, maybe even more down the line, what do you feel are the biggest challenges or the biggest challenge your community is facing?
I think all of Arizona and all of our Pinal County communities are really faced with the challenge of water. And everyone's water story is very different. So for a small town like Superior, one might assume that we're kind of just considered rural and out of the way, but we're actually in the Phoenix active management area. And so that means that we really have to watch where there's water mitigations, where water's going, whether it's with the extraction industry and or some of the recent developments where we don't have subdivisions being platted right now. So we can't just go in and start building homes, even though we have demand because of the water restrictions right now. And that's a very disappointing time for us because we're also grappling with affordable housing as we're diversifying our economy, not just to be, to diversify away from mining specifically while embracing it. Tourism. We have a big tourism market here. We're the home of the Boyce Thompson Arboretum. We have really great trails surrounded by the Tonto National Forest. And so we're also having to make sure that we have housing for everybody who lives and works in Superior who might not work at the mine. So, our municipal staff, our school staff, and all of those working in the retail and tourism sectors. So that really limits us with the water housing issue. And I think we've right now set some very solid plans that will help leaders in the future grapple as this becomes a much more important, as the situations with water and housing become more and more important and more focused on. I think we're setting some good policies and coalitions in place to work through those challenges, because I think we're all challenged with that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned tourism as well, and I know we were talking about this off camera, but I would love to hear from you because just looking at your background, tourism seems like it's something that's been a little bit of a passion for you, even in your own personal career. And so I would love if you could share, what role you think tourism plays for communities in the Copper Corridor.
Well, I think tourism is a low impact industry. What most small towns have is an abundance of friendliness and an abundance of willingness to share our stories. And that is something that's very easy to hone in on, and it doesn't cost us a lot of money. We have outdoor recreation spaces that, are basically free to use. You can enjoy the Arizona Trail throughout the entire Copper Corridor from Oracle to Superior. And then we have attractions like the Boyce Thompson Arboretum. And if you're traveling the entire region, you can go down to Oracle and do the zip line and visit the biosphere. All of those are so intrinsically connected to nature. And our friends up in Globe, Miami, they have other attractions that are also outdoor related. We're not far from Roosevelt Lake. So you can really have an undiscovered, I like to say like this area is kind of like undiscovered Arizona. It's not overly utilized, but there's a lot of really beautiful places to see. And Superior is a great anchor point to start your multi-day adventure throughout Arizona's Copper Corridor.
Yeah, that's amazing. And Mayor, if you could share with me, what's your favorite thing about Superior? What's the thing you love most?
Oh, that's a hard question for mayors to ask us what our favorite is. Everything's our favorite. I think what I love the most is that in Superior, people are kind and friendly. And even when there's a challenge or there's a grievance or something tragic, people come together regardless of what bad thing happened. And I think that's a trait that a lot of small towns have, and we don't celebrate that. It's also something I think that hones into who we are as Americans. At the end of the day, we all want to help our neighbor. We all want to see good things happen to people. And so that's my favorite thing about Superior. It's seeing our senior center having their parties on the holidays and seeing everybody come together. It's seeing the multi-generations of students who dance with our dance troupe and knowing that, my daughter danced and I hope her children will dance and all their little cousins. It's that connection that we have in our community that makes doing this job as mayor the most fulfilling, is seeing the smiles on everyone's faces because we've really put a really great project together.
Yeah. And so just a couple more questions for you. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about is, when you think about, because you have a lengthy history in giving back to your community, and in serving in different positions. You mentioned Central Arizona governments earlier, CAG, of course, and a number of other initiatives. So if you could give a message to your community about the impact that giving back has, what would it be?
I think that when you give back and you give back with no expectation, your life is rewarded greatly. And I feel like that's kind of what's happened with me. It was growing up, we were involved with activities in the town, whether it was being involved with the library or starting the Optimist Club, which, we started an Optimist Club when most social clubs like that or service clubs were kind of falling out of the norm. And I think, when you're having a bad day and you realize you worked on a project that, gave a laptop to a graduating senior so they can start their college career, or you've, helped raise some money to put in a new mural, you had an intangible stake in something that hopefully makes other people happy for a very long term. I think overall that you're seeing more and more science is even saying that people that give and have gratitude in their lives, they live longer, they live healthier, they're less prone to some other diseases. And I think it's a good mantra for people. Just giving a little bit says it makes you feel better, even if it's only $1 that you put in that little, thing at the cash register. You're helping somebody, and that matters.
Mm-hmm. And so our last question, if you were to think many, many, many years down the line, when people remember the work you've done here in Superior, whether that be, through your career, through your time as mayor, but when people reflect back on who you were as a person and the work you've done, what do you hope they remember your legacy as?
I hope they remember me as a tenacious and hard worker and somebody who only wanted the best for everyone in Superior.
That's incredible. Mayor Besich, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.